My mother-in-law poisoned my dog, so I ruined her life. This story begins with my golden retriever, Buddy. He was more than just a pet, he was family. My husband, Tom, and I got him as a puppy, and he was the sunshine in our lives. My mother-in-law, however, never liked Buddy. She'd complain about the fur, the smell, the nuisance of having a dog in the house. Every time she visited, she'd make passive-aggressive comments like, "A dog's place is outside," or, "You treat that animal better than a child." I brushed it off. I knew she was from a different generation and just didn't understand the bond we had with him. The first sign something was seriously wrong was when Buddy started getting sick after her visits. At first, it was just mild stomach upset. The vet couldn't find anything specific, suggesting it might be an allergy or him eating something he shouldn't have in the yard. We became extra careful, watching him like a hawk. But the pattern continued. She'd visit on a Sunday, and by Monday morning, Buddy would be lethargic and unwell. My husband thought I was being paranoid, that it was just a coincidence. "Mom would never hurt a fly," he'd say. I wanted to believe him, I really did. The final time, it was different. She came over for a family dinner. I remember her making a big fuss about how clean the house was, which was unusual for her. She even brought a special treat she'd made for Buddy. I was hesitant, but to keep the peace, I let her give it to him. She smiled this strange, tight smile as he gobbled it down. That night was the worst night of my life. Buddy became violently ill. We rushed him to the emergency vet. His breathing was shallow, and he was in so much pain. Despite everything the vets did, he didn't make it. He passed away in my arms. The grief was suffocating. It was a pain I wouldn't wish on anyone. The vet did an autopsy at my insistence. The results were chilling. Rat poison, mixed with something sweet. Designed to be irresistible. My blood ran cold. The treat, it had to be the treat. When I told my husband, he was in shock, still in denial. He confronted his mother, who played the victim perfectly. She cried, she screamed. She accused me of being a monster for even thinking such a thing. She swore on her life she would never do that. For a while, my husband was caught in the middle. He loved his mother, but he loved me, and he had loved Buddy. The house felt so empty, so quiet. The silence was a constant reminder of our loss. I knew I couldn't let this go. I needed proof, something undeniable. So I started digging. I remembered she had mentioned visiting a friend who lived near a specific garden supply store. It was a long shot, but I felt this pull, this need to know. I installed a small, discreet security camera on our front porch, pointing at the driveway. I told my husband it was for general security. A few weeks later, I accidentally left my laptop at her house after a family gathering. I knew she was nosy. I had a keylogger program running on it. It was a desperate move, but my grief was making me do things I never thought I would. I checked the logs a few days later. Bingo. Her search history was a gold mine. Tasteless poisons for dogs. How much rat poison is lethal? For a golden retriever, symptoms of dog poisoning. My hands were shaking as I read it. The cold, calculated cruelty of it all was staggering. She hadn't just made a mistake, she had researched it, planned it. She had watched my best friend suffer and die. And then she had lied to our faces. I printed everything out. The search history, the vet's report. I even managed to find a receipt from that garden supply store for the exact brand of poison, dated 2 days before she gave Buddy that final treat. I compiled it all into a neat, damning folder. The next step was to find out why. What could possibly motivate someone to do something so evil? I started talking to other family members, cautiously at first. I spoke to her sister, my husband's aunt, who had always been a bit estranged from her. It turned out my mother-in-law had a history of this kind of behavior. Not with animals, but with people. She had a deep-seated jealousy and a need for control. The aunt told me stories about how my mother-in-law had sabotaged her own sister's career and relationships out of pure spite. She saw me, and by extension Buddy, as a threat to her relationship with her son. She felt I was stealing him, and Buddy was the symbol of the new life he had built without her at the center. Armed with this knowledge, I decided I wasn't just going to expose her. I was going to dismantle the perfect little life she had built for herself. My mother-in-law was a pillar of her community. She was the head of the church charity committee, a volunteer at the local library, and had a reputation for being a sweet, grandmotherly figure. It was all a carefully constructed facade. My first target was her social standing. I started small. I anonymously sent a tip to the church committee about some financial discrepancies in the charity funds. I knew she was skimming a little off the top for her shopping sprees. An audit was launched. It wasn't a huge amount, but it was enough to have her quietly removed from her position. The gossip started to swirl. Next, I turned to her friendships. She was part of a tight-knit bridge club with some of the most influential women in town. I used some of the more personal information I'd gathered. My mother-in-law loved to gossip, and she had shared some very private details about her friends with me over the years, trying to drive a wedge between me and others. I repackaged this information and sent it in anonymous letters to the respective friends. A secret affair here, a hidden debt there. It was chaos. The bridge club imploded, and she was left isolated. The final piece was my husband. I sat him down and laid out all the evidence. The search history, the vet report, the receipt, the stories from his aunt. I showed him the cold, hard proof of what his mother had done. Seeing it all in black and white finally shattered his denial. The look on his face was a mixture of horror and heartbreak. He finally saw his mother for who she truly was, not the saint he had imagined. He went to her house alone. I don't know exactly what was said, but I know there was a lot of shouting. He came back hours later, looking exhausted but resolute. He had cut her out of his life completely. He told her that if she ever came near us or any pet we ever owned again, he would personally hand the folder of evidence to the police. Her life unraveled quickly after that. Without her son, her social circle, or her community status, she was nothing, the last I heard. She had sold her house and moved to a small apartment in another town. She was alone, just like she had made me feel after Buddy was gone. Some might say what I did was too harsh, that revenge is a dark path. But every time I look at the empty spot where Buddy's bed used to be, I don't feel a single ounce of regret. I didn't just get justice for my dog. I protected my family from a monster hiding in plain sight. I did it for Buddy. Thanks for listening to my story. If you've been through something similar, know that you're not alone. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more stories. See you next time.